The rain came down like bullets that Tuesday evening. Jake pulled his old pickup truck closer to the shoulder of Mountain View Road, squinting through the windshield wipers that barely worked anymore. He'd been driving this route for 3 years, heading home from the construction site where he worked as a foreman. Nothing ever happened on this quiet mountain road. Until tonight. Lightning split the sky, and in that brief flash of light, Jake saw something that made his heart stop. A car had gone off the road about 50 yards ahead. Not just any car. A sleek black sedan that looked expensive even from this distance. It sat at a dangerous angle, its front wheels hanging over the edge of what Jake knew was a steep drop into the valley below. He pulled over immediately, grabbing his flashlight from the glove compartment. The wind whipped rain into his face as he ran toward the wreck. His work boots slipped on the wet asphalt, but he kept moving. Years of working construction had taught him to think fast in dangerous situations, and right now, every second counted. The car was worse up close than he'd imagined. The driver's side was completely smashed against a large pine tree, which was probably the only thing keeping the vehicle from plunging over the cliff. Jake could hear the metal groaning under the strain. This whole thing could go over the edge any minute. He shined his flashlight through the passenger window and felt his stomach drop. A young woman sat unconscious in the driver's seat, her head tilted at an angle that worried him. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead. She looked to be in her mid-20s with dark hair that had come loose from what was probably once a neat ponytail. Even unconscious and injured, Jake could tell she was beautiful. But what struck him most wasn't her appearance, it was what she was wearing. A white silk blouse that probably cost more than Jake made in a month. Diamond earrings that caught the light from his flashlight. A watch that looked like it belonged in a jewelry store window. This woman had money, serious money. None of that mattered right now, though. Rich or poor, she was in trouble. Jake tried the passenger door first. Locked. He ran around to the driver's side, but that door was completely crushed shut by the impact with the tree. The back doors were also locked. He was running out of options, and the car was making more creaking sounds with each gust of wind. He made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Jake picked up a rock from the roadside and smashed the passenger window. Glass scattered everywhere, but he didn't care about the noise or the damage. He cleared away the sharp pieces as quickly as he could and climbed through the window into the car. The woman was breathing, which was the most important thing. But she was completely unconscious, and Jake could see she had other injuries besides the cut on her head. Her left arm hung at an odd angle, possibly broken. There might be internal injuries too. He had no way of knowing. The car shifted slightly and Jake's heart raced. They needed to get out of here now. "Hey," he said softly, touching her shoulder. "Can you hear me?" "We need to get you out of here." No response. She was completely out. Jake had never carried an unconscious person before, but he'd moved plenty of heavy materials at work. The key was to keep her spine straight and support her head. He carefully unbuckled her seatbelt and slid his arms under her knees and behind her back. She was lighter than he expected, but getting her through the passenger window while keeping her stable was the hardest thing he'd ever done. The car rocked with their movement, and Jake could hear small stones falling from the cliff edge below. His hands were shaking, partly from adrenaline and partly from the cold rain that had soaked through his work jacket. Finally, after what felt like an hour but was probably only 2 minutes, Jake managed to get her out of the car and onto solid ground. He carried her about 20 feet away from the edge, just as another gust of wind hit. The car creaked loudly, but it held. Jake laid her down gently on a patch of grass beside the road, using his jacket to cover her and protect her from the rain. That's when he got his first real look at her face. She couldn't have been older than 25. Her skin was pale from shock, but even injured and unconscious, she had a peaceful expression. Like someone who had never known real hardship, her expensive clothes were ruined now. The white silk blouse was torn and stained with blood and dirt. One of her diamond earrings was missing. Her perfectly manicured nails were chipped. But she was alive, and that's all that mattered to Jake. He checked her pulse, steady but weak. Her breathing was shallow but regular. The cut on her forehead had stopped bleeding, which was good. But she needed medical attention fast, and they were at least 20 minutes from the nearest hospital. Jake ran back to his truck and grabbed an old blanket from behind the seat. It smelled like motor oil and sawdust, but it was warm and dry. He wrapped it around her carefully, then lifted her again. She felt even lighter now, like a child. The drive to Valley General Hospital was the longest 20 minutes of Jake's life. He kept one eye on the road and one eye on his passenger, watching for any sign that she was waking up or getting worse. He talked to her the whole way, even though she couldn't hear him. "Stay with me," he said. "You're going to be okay. I don't know who you are, but somebody's probably worried sick about you right now. We'll get you fixed up." The emergency room staff took over the moment Jake carried her through the automatic doors. Nurses appeared with a gurney, and a doctor started asking rapid-fire questions about what happened. Jake told them everything he could remember about the accident and her condition. "Are you family?" a nurse asked him as they wheeled her away. "No," Jake said. "I just found her. I don't even know her name." "Well, you saved her life," the doctor said, looking back at Jake with respect. "That car could have gone over the edge at any time. She's lucky you came along." Jake sat in the waiting room for 3 hours, still wearing his wet work clothes and boots that squeaked against the hospital floor. He didn't know why he stayed. He didn't know this woman. He had work in the morning. His mother was probably wondering where he was. But something kept him in that uncomfortable plastic chair, drinking terrible coffee from a vending machine and watching the clock on the wall tick by. At 11:30 p.m., the doctor came out with good news. She was conscious, stable, and asking about the man who had rescued her. She had a mild concussion, a broken wrist, and some bruised ribs, but nothing life-threatening. She was incredibly lucky. "She wants to thank you," the doctor said. "Room 237 if you want to see her." Jake hesitated. He'd done what anyone would do. He didn't need thanks, but curiosity got the better of him, and he found himself walking down the hospital hallway toward room 237, about to meet the mysterious woman whose life he'd just saved. Jake knocked softly on the door of room 237 before pushing it open. The woman was awake, propped up in the hospital bed with her left wrist in a cast and a small bandage over the cut on her forehead. Under the harsh hospital lights, he could see her more clearly now. She had warm brown eyes and a gentle smile that made Jake forget he was standing there in dirty work clothes. "You must be my guardian angel," she said, her voice soft but clear. "The doctor told me what you did. Thank you doesn't seem like enough." Jake felt his cheeks get warm. He wasn't used to being called a hero. Anyone would have done the same thing. "I'm just glad you're okay." "I'm Luna," she said, extending her good hand. "And I'm very much okay thanks to you." "Jake," he replied, shaking her hand carefully. Her skin was soft, like someone who had never done manual labor. "Luna's a pretty name. I don't think I've heard it before." Something flickered across her face for just a moment, but then she smiled again. "My parents were creative. What do you do, Jake, besides rescuing people from car accidents?" "Construction," he said, suddenly aware of the dirt under his fingernails. "I'm a foreman for a crew that builds houses mostly. Nothing too exciting." "That sounds very exciting to me," Luna said, and she seemed to mean it. "Building things that last, creating homes for families. That's important work." Jake found himself relaxing. Most people either looked down on construction work or acted like it was beneath them. Luna seemed genuinely interested. They talked for another hour before a nurse came in and said visiting hours were over. Jake left his phone number with Luna, telling her to call if she needed anything. He didn't expect to hear from her again. Women like Luna didn't usually stay in touch with guys like him, but the next morning his phone rang while he was eating breakfast. "Jake, it's Luna. I hope it's not too early. I wanted to ask you something." "Not too early at all," Jake said, nearly choking on his coffee. "What's up?" "The doctor says I can leave the hospital today, but I don't really have anywhere to go right now. Is there a decent hotel in town? Something quiet where I can rest for a few days." Jake thought about it. The only hotel in their small mountain town was the Mountain View Inn, but it was expensive and kind of fancy. Then he remembered something better. "There's a bed and breakfast called Pine Ridge," he said. "Mrs. Rodriguez runs it. She's really nice and it's quiet. Good food too, that sounds perfect. Could you possibly give me the number?" Jake gave her the information and Luna thanked him again. He figured that would be the end of it. But an hour later she called back. "I hope I'm not bothering you," she said. "But I was wondering, would you mind showing me around town sometime? I don't know anyone here and you seem like the kind of person who knows all the good places." Jake nearly dropped his phone. A woman like Luna wanted to spend time with him? "Sure," he managed to say. "I'd be happy to." That afternoon, Jake picked her up at Pine Ridge in his old pickup truck. Luna was wearing jeans and a simple sweater. But even in casual clothes, she looked elegant. She didn't seem to mind the truck's cracked seat or the fact that the radio only worked sometimes. "This is beautiful," she said as they drove through the downtown area. "How long have you lived here?" "My whole life," Jake said. "Born and raised. It's not much, but it's home." "It has character," Luna said, looking out at the small shops and tree-lined streets. "I like places with character." Jake showed her around the town center, which took all of 15 minutes. There was Miller's Diner, where everyone ate breakfast on Sunday mornings. The hardware store that Jake's friend Tony had inherited from his father. The small library that doubled as a community center. The park where Jake had played baseball as a kid. "It's perfect," Luna said as they sat on a bench by the pond in the center of the park. "So peaceful." "Do you ever want to leave?" "Sometimes," Jake admitted. "I've always wanted to start my own construction company, maybe build custom homes. But that takes money and I'm still saving up." "How much would you need?" Luna asked. Jake laughed. "More than I'll probably ever have. At least 50,000 to get started properly, maybe more." Luna was quiet for a moment, watching the ducks swim across the pond. "Money isn't everything," she said finally. "I've known people with all the money in the world who were miserable." There was something sad in her voice that made Jake look at her more carefully. "You sound like you speak from experience." "Maybe I do," she said with a small smile. "Tell me more about these custom homes you want to build." Jake found himself talking about his dreams in a way he never had before. Luna listened carefully, asking smart questions about materials and design. She seemed genuinely interested in every detail. Over the next 2 weeks, they spent almost every evening together. Jake would pick Luna up after work, and they'd explore different parts of the area. They hiked the mountain trails, ate dinner at Miller's Diner, and spent hours talking about everything and nothing. Luna paid for everything in cash, always pulling crisp bills from her wallet before Jake could object. When he tried to argue, she'd say she owed him for saving her life, and besides, she was between jobs and had some savings to live on. "What kind of work did you do before?" Jake asked one evening as they shared a pizza at the town's only restaurant. "Consulting," Luna said vaguely. "Business stuff. Pretty boring, actually. I'm taking some time to figure out what I really want to do with my life." Jake could understand that. He'd felt the same way before he got into construction. "Well, you're smart enough to do anything you want," he said. Luna smiled, but there was something wistful about it. Sometimes being smart isn't enough. Sometimes you have to choose between what you want and what's expected of you. Jake didn't know what she meant by that, but he could hear the pain in her voice. Whatever Luna's story was, there was more to it than she was telling him. What amazed Jake most was how easy everything felt with Luna. She didn't care that he drove an old truck, or that his work clothes were always a little dirty. She laughed at his jokes, listened to his stories about the construction crew, and seemed to enjoy the simple things they did together. One evening, they were sitting on the porch at Pine Ridge, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. Luna had been staying there for 2 weeks now, and Jake was starting to worry that she'd leave soon. "This is the most peaceful I've felt in years," Luna said quietly. "Years?" Jake asked. "What was your life like before?" Luna was quiet for a long time. "Complicated," she said finally. "Very complicated. My family. They have very specific ideas about how my life should go, what I should do, who I should spend time with, even who I should marry." "Marry?" Jake felt his heart sink. "You're engaged?" "Not anymore," Luna said firmly. "That's part of why I'm here. I needed to get away from all that, to remember who I am when no one's telling me who I should be." Jake felt relieved but also confused. What kind of family tried to control an adult daughter's life like that? "Well, for what it's worth," he said carefully, "I think you should get to choose your own life." Luna turned to look at him, and Jake saw tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You have no idea how much that means to me." That night, as Jake drove home, he realized he was falling for Luna. Hard. She was beautiful and smart and kind, and she seemed to care about him too. But there were things about her story that didn't add up. Her expensive clothes, the way she always paid cash, the mysterious family that wanted to control her life. Jake had grown up in a small town where everybody knew everybody else's business. He was good at reading people, and Luna was hiding something big. He just hoped that when the truth came out, it wouldn't destroy what they were building together. The next morning, Jake was pouring concrete for a foundation when his phone rang. It was Luna, and she sounded excited. "Jake, are you free for lunch? I want to show you something." "Sure," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "What's up?" "It's a surprise," Luna said. "Meet me at Miller's Diner at noon." Jake spent the rest of the morning wondering what Luna wanted to show him. When he arrived at the diner, she was already there, sitting in their usual booth by the window. She had a folder in front of her and a smile that lit up her whole face. "What's all this?" Jake asked, sliding into the seat across from her. "Business plans," Luna said, opening the folder. "I've been doing some research on starting a construction company." "Look at this." Jake stared at the papers Luna spread out on the table. They were professional business documents, market analysis, financial projections, licensing requirements. The kind of stuff that cost thousands of dollars to have prepared. "Luna, this is incredible work, but how did you—" "I told you I used to do consulting," she said quickly. "I know how to put together a business plan. And Jake, the numbers look really good for this area. There's a lot of demand for custom homes." Jake studied the documents, amazed by how thorough they were. Everything he'd ever dreamed of was laid out in black and white, with realistic timelines and profit projections. "This is amazing," he said. "But I still don't have the startup money." Luna's smile faded slightly. "What if you had a business partner? Someone with capital to invest?" Jake looked up at her. "You mean you? Why not?" "You have the skills and experience. I have business knowledge and some money saved up. We could be partners." It was tempting. More than tempting. But Jake had learned to be careful about things that seemed too good to be true. "Luna, I appreciate this, I really do. But I barely know you. We've known each other for 2 weeks. Sometimes 2 weeks is enough," Luna said softly. "Sometimes you meet someone and you just know." Jake felt the same way, but he also felt like Luna was still keeping secrets from him. "Important ones. Can I think about it?" he asked. "Of course," Luna said, but Jake could see disappointment in her eyes. "Take all the time you need." As they left the diner together, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that Luna was running from something, and he was starting to worry that whatever she was running from might catch up with both of them. 3 weeks after Luna's business proposal, Jake's quiet life began to unravel in ways he never saw coming. It started with a phone call at 6 in the morning. Jake was getting ready for work when his cell phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. "Jake Rivera." The voice was rough, unfriendly. "Yeah, who's this?" "You need to mind your own business, Rivera. Stop sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." The line went dead before Jake could ask what the caller meant. He stared at his phone, confused. He couldn't think of any business he'd been sticking his nose into. Maybe it was a wrong number or some kind of prank, but the call bothered him all day. During his lunch break, he mentioned it to his coworker, Danny, who was eating a sandwich next to their work truck. "Weird," Danny said, frowning. "You haven't been dating anyone's ex-wife or anything, have you?" "No," Jake laughed. "Nothing like that. I've been seeing Luna, but she's not from around here." "Luna? The woman from the accident?" "Yeah. She's been staying at Pine Ridge for a few weeks." Danny got a strange look on his face. Jake, man, I need to tell you something. I saw her the other day at the bank. She was making a withdrawal and I happened to be in line behind her. So, she pulled out $2,000 in cash. Just like it was nothing." Danny lowered his voice. "And Jake, the way she was dressed, that wasn't Target clothes. That was expensive stuff." Jake felt uncomfortable. He knew Luna had money. Her clothes and jewelry made that obvious. But $2,000 in cash seemed like a lot for someone who was between jobs. Maybe she had a good job before, Jake said, not really believing it himself. "Maybe," Danny said. "Just be careful, man. Rich people sometimes have complicated problems." That evening, Jake was driving to pick up Luna for dinner when he noticed a dark sedan following him. At first, he thought it was coincidence. But when he turned left onto Maple Street, the sedan turned left too. When he took a right onto Pine Avenue, so did the sedan. Jake's hands tightened on the steering wheel. This couldn't be related to the phone call this morning, could it? He decided to test it. Instead of going straight to Pine Ridge, he took a detour through the residential part of town, making several unnecessary turns. The sedan stayed with him the whole time, always exactly 3 cars back. By the time Jake reached Pine Ridge, his heart was pounding. He parked and looked back, but the sedan was nowhere to be seen. Maybe he'd imagined the whole thing. Luna was waiting for him on the porch wearing a blue dress that probably cost more than Jake made in a week. She looked beautiful, but Jake found himself noticing her expensive clothes in a new way. "You okay?" Luna asked as they drove to dinner. "You seem tense." Jake almost told her about the phone call and the car that had followed him. But something held him back. What if Luna was involved somehow? What if her mysterious past was catching up with both of them? "Just tired," he said. "Long day at work." Dinner at Miller's Diner was awkward. Jake couldn't focus on the conversation, and Luna kept asking if something was wrong. He wanted to trust her, but Danny's words kept echoing in his head. Rich people sometimes have complicated problems. The next few days were worse. Jake received 2 more threatening phone calls, both with the same message: "Mind your own business." His work truck was vandalized. Someone had slashed his tires and scratched back off into the paint on the driver's side door. Jake reported it to the police, but Officer Martinez just shrugged and said it was probably teenagers. The town was too small to have real crime, so the local cops weren't used to dealing with serious threats. On Thursday night, Jake was walking out of the hardware store when 3 men approached him in the parking lot. They looked like they'd stepped out of a movie about organized crime. Expensive suits, dark sunglasses even though it was evening, and the kind of confident swagger that came from being used to getting their way. Jake Rivera, the tallest one, a man with graying hair and cold blue eyes, stepped forward. Jake's mouth went dry. "Who wants to know?" "My name is Vincent Romano," the man said. "I think we need to have a conversation." Jake recognized the name immediately. Romano owned several businesses in the city, about an hour's drive from their small town. Officially, he ran a chain of restaurants and a construction supply company. Unofficially, everyone knew he was connected to less legal activities. "I don't think we have anything to talk about," Jake said, backing toward his truck. "Oh, but we do." Romano smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You see, your friend Danny Martinez owes me money. Quite a bit of money, actually." Jake's heart sank. Danny had mentioned having some financial troubles, but he'd never said anything about borrowing from people like Romano. "What does that have to do with me?" Jake asked. "Danny seems to have disappeared," Romano said. "But before he left town, he told several people that if anything happened to him, his good friend Jake Rivera would take care of his debts." "That's not true," Jake said quickly. "Danny never said anything like that to me." "Maybe not," Romano agreed. "But he did use your name as a reference when he borrowed the money. And now he's gone and I'm out $15,000. $15,000. Jake felt sick. He didn't have that kind of money. His entire savings account had less than $8,000 in it. Money he'd been carefully saving for years to start his own business. "I can't pay Danny's debts," Jake said. "I don't have that kind of money." Romano's smile disappeared. "That's unfortunate, Jake, because Danny's debt is now your responsibility." "I'll give you 1 week to come up with the money. And if I can't?" Romano looked around the quiet parking lot, then back at Jake. "Let's just say that accidents happen, especially to people who don't pay their debts. And sometimes accidents happen to people they care about too." Jake's blood turned cold. Luna. They were threatening Luna. "You leave her out of this," Jake said, surprised by the anger in his own voice. "She doesn't have anything to do with this." "Then you'd better make sure I get my money," Romano said. He turned to leave, then looked back. "Oh, and Jake? Don't think about going to the police. Officer Martinez is a good friend of mine. This is a private matter between businessmen." The 3 men walked away, leaving Jake alone in the parking lot with his hands shaking and his mind racing. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do. He could try to find Danny, but if Danny had run away from Vincent Romano, he was probably long gone. Jake could ignore the threat, but Romano didn't seem like the kind of man who made empty promises. The worst part was that Jake believed Romano when he said Luna was in danger too. The thought of anything happening to her made Jake's chest tight with fear. By morning, Jake had made his decision. He went to the bank as soon as it opened and withdrew his entire savings account. $7,843. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. He also took out a loan against his truck, another $3,000. He borrowed $2,000 from his credit cards, maxing them out. It still wasn't enough. He was about $4,000 short. Jake spent the day calling everyone he knew, asking for loans. His mother offered her savings, $600 that she'd been keeping for emergencies. His sister in Phoenix said she could send 500. A few friends from work pooled together another 800. By evening, Jake had scraped together $14,200. Close, but not quite enough. He was sitting in his kitchen counting the money for the 5th time when he remembered something. Luna had offered to be his business partner. She'd said she had money to invest. Maybe, no. Jake couldn't ask Luna for money to pay off a debt to a criminal. That would put her in even more danger. And besides, he barely knew her. What if she asked too many questions? What if she got scared and left town? Jake made another decision that would change everything. The next morning, he went to Tom Bradley, the contractor he'd been working for since he graduated high school. Tom was a good man who'd been like a father to Jake over the years. "I need to ask you for something, Tom," Jake said, standing in Tom's small office at the construction yard. "And I know it's a lot." Tom looked up from his paperwork. "What's on your mind, son?" "I need an advance on my salary." "A big advance," Tom frowned. "How big?" $3,000. Tom set down his pen. "Jake, that's more than 2 months' salary. What's going on?" Jake had prepared a story. He couldn't tell Tom the truth about Romano. That would just put Tom in danger too. "My mom needs surgery," he lied. "Insurance won't cover all of it." Tom studied Jake's face for a long moment. Jake tried to look sincere, hating himself for lying to a man who'd always been honest with him. "I can give you 2,000, Tom said finally, "but I'll have to take it out of your paychecks over the next 6 months. That's going to leave you pretty tight for money." "I understand," Jake said. "Thank you, Tom. This really helps." With Tom's advance, Jake finally had enough money to pay Romano. That evening, he met the 3 men in the same parking lot where they'd first approached him. "Smart choice," Romano said, counting the money Jake handed him. "I hope you learned something from this experience." "Yeah," Jake said. "I learned to be more careful about who I trust." Romano laughed. "Trust is expensive, Jake, remember that." After the men left, Jake sat in his truck feeling empty. His savings were gone. His truck was mortgaged. His credit cards were maxed out. He'd lied to Tom and would be working essentially for free for the next 6 months to pay back the advance. All of this to protect Luna, a woman he'd known for less than a month. A woman who was still keeping secrets from him. As Jake drove home, he couldn't shake the feeling that his problems were just beginning. Romano might be satisfied for now, but men like that always came back for more. And somewhere out there, Luna's mysterious past was waiting to catch up with both of them. Jake had risked everything to keep Luna safe. He just hoped she was worth it. But 3 days later, Jake's worst fears came true. He arrived at the construction site Friday morning to find Tom waiting for him with a grim expression. "Jake, we need to talk," Tom said. "Someone sabotaged the foundation we poured yesterday. The concrete is ruined. We're going to have to tear it all out and start over." Jake stared at the damaged foundation. It would cost thousands of dollars to fix, and the delay would push back the entire project. "Who would do something like this?" Jake asked, though he already suspected he knew the answer. "I don't know," Tom said sadly. "But Jake, I'm going to have to let you go. The client is threatening to sue over the delay, and I can't afford to keep you on if this kind of thing is going to keep happening." Jake nodded, feeling numb. Romano had kept his word about not hurting Jake directly, but he'd found another way to make Jake pay for not being more cooperative. As Jake cleaned out his locker and said goodbye to his coworkers, he realized his life had completely fallen apart in less than a week. No job, no savings, no prospects, and Luna still didn't know any of it had happened. Jake spent the weekend avoiding Luna's calls. He'd lost his job Friday afternoon, and by Monday morning he'd have to tell his landlord he couldn't make rent. His whole life had crumbled in less than a week, all because he'd tried to protect a woman who might not even need protecting. Sunday evening, Luna showed up at his apartment. "Jake, what's going on?" she said when he opened the door. "You haven't answered my calls. I was worried something happened to you." Jake looked at her standing in his doorway wearing another expensive outfit that probably cost more than he'd made in his last month of work. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Come in," he said quietly. Luna sat on his old couch and looked around his small apartment. Jake suddenly felt embarrassed by how modest everything was. His second-hand furniture, the TV he'd bought at a garage sale, the kitchen table he'd inherited from his grandmother. "Jake, talk to me," Luna said. "What's wrong?" Jake almost told her everything. About Danny's debt, about Romano, about losing his job and his savings. But something held him back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the growing certainty that Luna wasn't who she claimed to be. "I lost my job," he said finally. "Some problems at the construction site. I'm going to have to figure out what to do next." Luna's face softened with concern. "Oh, Jake, I'm so sorry. But this could be a blessing in disguise. Maybe it's time to start that construction company we talked about. I could still be your partner." "Luna, I need to ask you something," Jake said. "And I need you to be honest with me." "Of course, who are you really?" Luna's expression didn't change, but Jake caught a flicker of something in her eyes. "Fear, maybe. Or guilt. What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean, you've been staying at an expensive bed and breakfast for a month, paying cash for everything. You dress like you shop on Fifth Avenue. You pulled $2,000 out of the bank like it was pocket change." Jake paused. People who are between jobs don't usually have that kind of money. Luna was quiet for a long moment. "I told you I had some savings." "From what job?" "You said consulting, but that's pretty vague." "Jake, why does it matter? I care about you." "Isn't that enough?" "It matters because I think you're in some kind of trouble, and I think that trouble might be affecting me too." Luna stood up suddenly. "I should go." "Luna, wait." But she was already heading for the door. Jake followed her, but she was walking fast toward a car he'd never seen before. Not a rental car or a taxi. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows and a driver behind the wheel. Jake felt his stomach drop. "Luna, whose car is that?" She paused with her hand on the door handle. "Jake, I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." Before Jake could ask what she meant, Luna got into the SUV and it drove away, leaving Jake standing alone in his apartment complex parking lot. Monday morning brought more bad news. Jake's landlord, Mrs. Chen, knocked on his door at 8 a.m. "Jake, I hate to do this," she said, "but I need to ask you to move out by the end of the month." "Mrs. Chen, I know I'm going to be late with rent this month, but I can catch up." "It's not about the money," she said, looking uncomfortable. "I got a visit yesterday from some men who said you were involved in some bad business. They said it might not be safe for my other tenants if you stayed here." Jake felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Romano was still making his life miserable even after Jake had paid Danny's debt. "Those men were lying," Jake said. "I'm not involved in anything bad." "I believe you," Mrs. Chen said. "But I can't take chances with my other tenants' safety." "I'm sorry, Jake. You're a good kid, but I need you to find somewhere else to live." After Mrs. Chen left, Jake sat on his couch trying to figure out what to do next. No job, no savings, and now he was being evicted. His life had become a disaster movie, and he was starting to wonder if Luna had somehow brought all this bad luck with her. That afternoon, Jake's phone rang. It was Luna. "Jake, can you meet me at Pine Ridge? There's something I need to tell you." "I don't think that's a good idea," Jake said. "Please. You deserve to know the truth." Against his better judgment, Jake drove to Pine Ridge. Luna was waiting in the lobby, but she wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit was sitting across from her, and through the window Jake could see several black SUVs parked outside. Jake's heart started racing. Whatever was happening, it was big. "Jake," Luna said when she saw him, "thank you for coming." This is my father." The man stood up and extended his hand. He was tall, distinguished, with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded respect. "Victor Castellanos," he said. "I believe you know my daughter Elena." "Elena, not Luna." Jake shook the man's hand automatically, his mind trying to process what he was hearing. "Your daughter?" "Yes," Victor said. "Elena has been indisposed for the past month. We've been very worried about her." Jake looked at Luna, Elena, and saw tears in her eyes. "Jake, I'm sorry. I lied to you about my name." "Elena Castellanos," Victor continued, "is the heir to Castellanos Media Group. Perhaps you've heard of us?" Jake had heard of them. Castellanos Media owned newspapers, television stations, and magazines across the country. They were worth billions of dollars. And Luna, Elena, was Victor Castellanos' daughter. "I don't understand," Jake said, feeling like the room was spinning. "If she's your daughter, why has she been hiding here for a month?" Victor's expression hardened. "Because Elena decided to run away from her responsibilities. She was supposed to marry Senator William Morrison's son last month, a marriage that would have been very beneficial for both our families." "I didn't want to marry Richard," Elena said quietly. "I barely know him, and I certainly don't love him." "Love?" Victor said dismissively. is a luxury people in our position can't afford. Elena understands that now. Jake felt like he was in the middle of a soap opera. So the car accident was staged, Victor said. Elena arranged it herself as a way to disappear. She hired someone to crash the car and then planned to walk away and start a new life. Unfortunately, she didn't count on a good Samaritan rescuing her. Jake stared at Elena. You faked the accident? The accident was real, Elena said quickly. I hired someone to help me crash the car safely, but something went wrong. The car ended up much closer to the cliff than we planned. If you hadn't come along, she shuddered, I could have died. But you let me think you were in real danger, Jake said. You let me think I was a hero. You were a hero, Elena said, tears flowing now. You saved my life, Jake. The accident was supposed to be minor, but it went wrong and you genuinely saved me. Victor checked his expensive watch. This has been touching, but we need to go. Elena has a wedding to prepare for. I'm not marrying Richard, Elena said firmly. Yes, you are, Victor replied. Senator Morrison has been very patient, but his patience has limits. The wedding will take place next month as originally planned. Jake felt anger building in his chest. She's an adult. You can't force her to marry someone she doesn't want to marry. Victor looked at Jake like he was an insect. And you are? Someone who cares about your daughter. Really? Victor pulled out his phone and showed Jake a series of photos. Pictures of Jake meeting with Vincent Romano. Pictures of Jake handing Romano a stack of money. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're involved with some very unsavory people. Jake's blood ran cold. How did you get those pictures? I make it my business to know everything about people who get close to my daughter, Victor said. Vincent Romano is a known criminal. You paid him $15,000 last week. What was that for, Jake? Elena was staring at the photos with a shocked expression. Jake, who is that man? Jake realized he was trapped. If he told the truth about Danny's debt, it would make him look like he was involved with criminals. If he didn't explain, Elena would think the worst. It's not what it looks like, Jake said weakly. It looks like you're connected to organized crime, Victor said. It looks like you've been using my daughter to get close to our family's money. That's not true, Jake said desperately. Elena, you have to believe me. I never asked you for money. I never even knew who you really were. But Elena was backing away from him, looking confused and hurt. Jake, why didn't you tell me you were in trouble? Why didn't you trust me? Because I was trying to protect you, Jake said. I thought if I handled it myself, you'd be safe. Safe from what? Victor demanded. What kind of danger did you bring to my daughter? Jake couldn't answer without making things worse. Anything he said would just dig him deeper into the hole Victor had created for him. Elena, we're leaving, Victor said. Security will escort you to the car. Two large men in suits appeared behind Victor. They weren't threatening, but their presence made it clear that Elena didn't have a choice. Jake, Elena said as the security guards moved toward her. I need time to think about all this. Elena, please, Jake said. Let me explain everything. But Victor was already guiding his daughter toward the door. Goodbye, Mr. Rivera. Stay away from my daughter, or you'll find yourself dealing with people much more dangerous than Vincent Romano. Jake watched through the window as Elena got into one of the black SUVs. She looked back at him once through the tinted glass, but he couldn't see her expression. Within minutes, the convoy was gone, leaving Jake standing alone in the lobby of Pine Ridge. The woman he'd fallen in love with was Elena Castellanos, heir to a billion-dollar empire. The accident that had brought them together was fake. She'd been lying to him about her identity from the very beginning. And now her father thought Jake was a criminal who'd been using Elena to get to the family's money. Jake drove home in a daze. His small apartment had never felt more empty. Everything that had happened between him and Elena felt different now. Had any of it been real? Or had he just been a distraction for a rich woman who was running away from her problems? His phone rang. For a moment, Jake's heart jumped, hoping it was Elena. But it was his mother. Jake, honey, are you okay? Mrs. Chen called me. She said you have to move out? Jake closed his eyes. He'd have to tell his mother everything now. About losing his job, about the money he'd borrowed from her, about how his life had completely fallen apart. Mom, he said, I need to come over. We need to talk. As Jake drove to his mother's house, he realized that the worst part wasn't losing Elena. The worst part was that he still didn't know if what they'd shared was real. Had Elena genuinely cared about him? Or had he just been a convenient escape from her privileged life? He might never know the answer. And that uncertainty was going to haunt him for a very long time. 3 weeks passed without any word from Elena. Jake moved in with his mother temporarily, sleeping on the couch in her small apartment and trying to find work. Every construction company in the area had somehow heard about the problems at his last job. Nobody wanted to hire someone who came with potential trouble. Jake was starting to think about leaving town entirely when his mother knocked on the bathroom door while he was shaving. "Jake, there's someone here to see you," she called through the door. A young woman. Jake's heart jumped. Elena? He finished shaving quickly and walked to the living room, but it wasn't Elena standing in his mother's apartment. It was a woman he'd never seen before, Asian, probably in her 30s, wearing a professional business suit. "Mr. Rivera?" "My name is Amy Chen. I'm an investigative journalist with the Mountain View Gazette." Jake's mother offered Amy coffee, but the journalist politely declined and got straight to business. "I've been investigating Vincent Romano's activities in this area," Amy said. "Your name came up in my research." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "I don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Rivera, I know Romano extorted money from you last month. I also know it wasn't your debt you were paying." Amy pulled out a folder and spread several documents on his mother's coffee table. Bank records, phone logs, photographs. "Danny Martinez borrowed $15,000 from Romano 6 months ago," Amy continued. "When Danny couldn't pay, Romano started pressuring his friends and co-workers. You weren't the only one he threatened, but you were the only one who actually paid." Jake sat down heavily. "How do you know all this?" "I've been tracking Romano's loan operation for over a year," Amy said. "Danny Martinez contacted me before he left town. He felt terrible about what Romano did to you, and he wanted to help set the record straight." She handed Jake a handwritten letter. It was from Danny explaining everything. How he'd gambled away his savings. How he'd borrowed money from Romano without understanding the consequences. How Romano had used Jake's name as leverage even though Jake had never agreed to be responsible for the debt. "Danny also told me about the sabotage at your construction site," Amy said. "Romano has been targeting small businesses that don't cooperate with him. Your boss, Tom Bradley, was pressured to fire you." Jake felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief that someone finally knew the truth. Anger that Romano had destroyed his life over money that wasn't even his debt. "Why are you telling me this?" Jake asked. "Because Romano made a mistake when he targeted you," Amy said. "He didn't know about your connection to the Castellanos family. Victor Castellanos is one of the most powerful media owners in the country. When his security team investigated you, they documented everything Romano did." Amy pulled out more photographs. These showed Romano meeting with various people, including Tom Bradley and Jake's landlord, Mrs. Chen. "Victor Castellanos may not like you personally," Amy said, "but he hates people who threaten his family more. Romano's about to find himself facing federal charges for extortion and racketeering." Jake stared at the documents. "Victor Castellanos did this. Apparently his daughter convinced him that you weren't the criminal he thought you were. She told him about your character, about how you'd sacrificed everything to protect someone you cared about without asking for anything in return." Elena had defended him. Even after learning about Romano, even after her father had painted Jake as a criminal, she'd stood up for him. "Where is Elena now?" Jake asked. Amy's expression grew sympathetic. "Back home. The wedding is scheduled for this weekend." "She's really going through with it?" "As far as I know, yes. Her father is a very persuasive man." After Amy left, Jake sat on his mother's couch thinking about everything he'd learned. Romano was going to prison. His reputation would be cleared. Tom Bradley had already called that morning, asking Jake to come back to work. But none of that mattered if Elena was about to marry someone else. Jake's mother sat down beside him. "You love her, don't you?" "It doesn't matter, Mom. She's from a completely different world. Her father made it clear I'm not good enough for her." "Jake Rivera," his mother said firmly, "I raised you better than that. You don't let other people decide what you're worth." "But she lied to me about who she was." "Did she lie about her feelings?" Jake thought about all the time they'd spent together. The way Elena had listened to his dreams about starting his own company. The way she'd looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching. The way she'd kissed him on the porch at Pine Ridge. "No," he said quietly. "I don't think she lied about that." "Then what are you doing sitting here?" Jake looked at his mother. "What do you mean?" "The woman you love is about to marry the wrong man. If you really care about her, Shouldn't you at least try to stop it? Jake had been thinking the same thing for 3 weeks, but it seemed impossible. Mom, these people have billions of dollars. They have security guards and private jets. I'm just a construction worker. You're the man who saved her life, his mother said. You're the man who gave up everything to protect her. If that doesn't make you worthy of love, then money doesn't mean anything. That evening, Jake made a decision that scared him more than facing Vincent Romano had. He drove to the city where the Castellanos family lived. The wedding was being held at the Cathedral of St. Joseph, one of the most prestigious churches in the state. Jake had looked it up online. The guest list included senators, governors, and CEOs. It would be the social event of the year. Jake parked his old truck across the street from the cathedral at 5 in the morning. The wedding wasn't until 3 in the afternoon, but he wanted to see Elena before the ceremony started. Around 10 a.m., cars started arriving. Caterers, florists, photographers. At 11, the wedding party began showing up for pictures. Jake recognized Elena immediately, even from a distance. She was wearing a wedding dress that probably cost more than Jake's annual salary. Even from across the street, she looked beautiful. But she also looked sad. Jake watched Elena pose for pictures with her family and the groom. Richard Morrison was tall, handsome, and looked like he belonged in Elena's world. But Jake noticed that Elena never smiled during the photos. Not once. At 12:30, Jake saw his chance. Elena stepped away from the group and walked alone toward a small garden behind the cathedral. Jake crossed the street quickly, his heart pounding. "Elena," he called softly. She turned around and Jake saw surprise, then relief, then fear cross her face. "Jake, what are you doing here?" "I came to tell you the truth," Jake said. "About Romano, about the money, about everything. Jake, you can't be here. If my father sees you, Amy Chen told me what your father did. How he cleared my name with Romano. She said you defended me to him." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Of course I defended you. Jake, when I saw those photos, I was confused and hurt. But then I realized that whatever you'd done it to protect someone. You'd done it because you're a good man." "I paid Romano because he threatened you," Jake said. "Danny Martinez, a guy I work with, owed him money. Romano said he'd hurt you if I didn't pay Danny's debt. You gave up your life savings for me? I gave up everything for you. My job, my apartment, my future. And I'd do it again." Elena was crying now. "Jake, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted to disappear, to be someone normal for a while. When I met you, it was the first time in my life that someone cared about me for who I was, not what my family owned." "Then don't marry him," Jake said. "Come with me. We'll figure everything else out." "I can't," Elena whispered. "My father. He's threatened to disown me if I don't go through with this wedding. And Richard's father, the senator, he's promised to destroy our family's business if the marriage doesn't happen. So you're going to sacrifice your happiness for business deals.